Story Sirens, the podcast where we discuss myths and legends from around the world. I'm Sarah, and it's just me today. That's right. Today will be slightly different than past episodes. Yinny is out of town, so I'll be leading the episode all by my lonesome. And while things are strange and different, I'm going to take advantage of that. And we're going to take a slight detour from our usual topic of myths and cryptids. But we are staying in the vein of legends, don't worry. But first, I would like to thank T.L. Stevens for their very generous donation to the podcast. Your support helps us fund more content, better production, and we are so thankful for your support. We could not do this without you, and if you want to support the Story Sirens financially, either subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or head to ko-fi.com/storysirens. You can also join our public Discord to continue discussions about our episodes, and we always provide the link to that Discord in the show notes. Now back to the episode. Today we're discussing a violent, historic crime and the nursery rhyme it inspired. Because of course children casually sing rhymes about violence. The more I think about it, the more this is starting to sound like a classic Story Sirens episode. I mean, this might as well be a Grimm's fairy tale, but it's not. Now, if you're one of our Apple subscribers, you've most likely heard in some of our bonus content the story of how Yinny and I met. And if you haven't heard the story, I'm telling you here and now anyway. Don't worry, I promise this is relevant to the episode. Now, Yinny and I knew of each other in online voice acting spaces in the 20-teens, and in 2019, Yinny made a post on Twitter asking if anyone wanted to share a hotel room with her at an upcoming voiceover conference, BO Atlanta. I replied that I would be interested. Let me reiterate, we had never met in person and were really only online acquaintances. Well, Yinny said that sounded good to her, and when I told my parents about my plans to meet up with a stranger I'd met online and share a hotel room with them, they were reasonably freaked out. My mother said, and I quote, "She could be an axe murderer for all you know." Well, luckily, she wasn't. Yinny and I clicked pretty much immediately, and to this day, my mother refers to Yinny as her axe-wielding daughter. I had the honor of attending her wedding in early January this year, and as a loving wedding gift from my mother, Yinny received a custom-engraved axe which said, "Yinny Ann, VO Atlanta 2019, the Lizzie Borden Award." So that's it. We are discussing Lizzie Borden today. See, I told you our story was relevant. Now, before we continue, quick trigger warning. This episode will discuss murder, matricide, patricide, bloodshed, and violence. If you are listening around children, please wear headphones. If these topics are not to your taste, no problem. We'll see you next episode. All right, now for the nursery rhyme. Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks, and when she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. What could cause someone to turn on their family like that and remain famous for over 100 years? Lizzie Borden was born on July 19, 1860 in Fall River, Massachusetts, to parents Sarah and Andrew Borden. She was the youngest of 3 girls, though the middle child, Alice, died in infancy before Lizzie was born. It seemed the family was doomed to suffer from tragedy. Only 2 years after Lizzie's birth, her mother Sarah passed away, charging the older daughter Emma with protecting baby Lizzie. When Lizzie was 5, her father Andrew married Abby. And here is where things began to turn a bit strange. Andrew Borden had struggled financially throughout his early life, but eventually found success building furniture and caskets, as well as becoming a property developer. Fall River, Massachusetts was a textile town, and Andrew ran textile mills, owned commercial properties, and was president of the Union Savings Bank. Things had definitely improved financially for him. Andrew moved his family into a fine home in a nice enough neighborhood, but the house didn't have indoor plumbing, a common luxury in the homes of the wealthy and prosperous, and this was because Andrew didn't want to spend the money on it. This was a common theme with Andrew Borden. While he was good at making money, he was even better at hoarding it. It seemed his new wife Abby shared this skill, but daughters Emma and Lizzie found their father and stepmother's frugal lifestyle frustrating. In fact, Lizzie personally believed that Abby had married Andrew specifically for his money. It seemed there was no love lost between Lizzie and Abby. It was known Lizzie referred to her stepmother as Mrs. Borden. Yeesh. The Borden's live-in maid, 25-year-old Bridget Sullivan, stated that Emmy and Lizzie rarely even ate meals with their parents. Yeah, this all sounds healthy. Calling the relationship between Mr. and Mrs. Borden and the girls tense would honestly be an understatement. Mr. Borden was not liked in the community. Mrs. Borden was known to be rather frigid, and the girls believed that Mrs. Borden's family was unfairly benefiting from Mr. Borden's wealth. Mrs. Borden's relatives had received gifts of money and property from Mr. Borden, and Emma and Lizzie demanded that Mr. Borden sell them one of his rental properties. He did sell it to them for $1. Then the girls immediately sold it back to him for $5,000. In July 1892, there was a major argument within the family, which led to Emma and Lizzie leaving for New Bedford and staying there for several days. Things were not going well within the Borden household. Adding to the stress within the home was the fact that Lizzie was 32 and unmarried. Her being a spinster certainly did not help Mrs. Borden's view of Lizzie at all. But at least Lizzie was a Sunday school teacher, right? Well, who knows if those Sunday school lessons actually stuck with Lizzie. As mentioned earlier, Lizzie did not agree with how her father handled his money. She wanted her family to move to the prestigious neighborhood where the wealthy and affluent members of River Fall, Massachusetts resided, known as The Hill. She was also not happy that the neighborhood she currently lived in was full of immigrants. You're really making it not easy for us to root for you, Lizzie. So, on August 4th, 1892, Lizzie's Uncle Morse had breakfast with Mr. and Mrs. Borden after staying the night in the home. Then he left around 8:45 a.m. He planned to return for lunch. Mr. Borden then left the home at 9 a.m. Mrs. Borden went to the guest room to strip the sheets and put new ones on. It was here that she was murdered, with a hatchet, a small axe. Forensics showed that she was facing her attacker when she was struck in the side of the head with the hatchet, after which she fell to the floor and was struck with the hatchet 17 more times. Mr. Borden returned to the house around 10:30 a.m., but his key didn't unlock the front door. The maid, Bridget Sullivan, came to the door when she heard Mr. Borden knocking and saw that the door had been jammed shut. In her testimony, she said she heard Lizzie from the top of the stairs laughing. She let Mr. Borden into the house, who promptly went to lay down on the couch for a mid-morning nap. Bridget Sullivan went to her room on the 3rd floor for a short rest, and around 11:10 a.m. heard Lizzie call from downstairs, "Come quick! Father's dead! Someone came and killed him!" Mr. Borden had been struck with a hatchet around 11 times, and forensic evidence showed he was killed around 11 a.m. while he had been asleep. I know, this got way dark, way fast. Initially, Lizzie was not a suspect. How could she be? The daughter of a wealthy businessman and a Sunday school teacher couldn't possibly be capable of such a horrid act, could she? But the tide of public opinion quickly shifted against her. Why wasn't she weeping over the deaths of her father and stepmother? Why did her answers to police questioning keep changing? Why had she tried to buy poison from the local drugstore a few days before the murder? Why did she send her Irish immigrant maid for a doctor in another neighborhood when several of her own neighbors were immigrant doctors? The entire Lizzie Borden case became a prime example of social issues in the Victorian era. Gender disputes, the class system, immigration policies. The Lizzie Borden story became massive national news. Naturally, many Irish immigrants were interested in the investigation. Mill owners in Fall River were not popular people amongst the immigrants, as they were often mistreated and underpaid by mill owners. Many members of the police force were Irish, and they disliked Lizzie for treating them as her inferiors. John W. Collin, the city's second Irish mayor, ran an aggressive newspaper for the working class, and it printed a story stating that some of Lizzie's wealthier family members were raising money to ensure Lizzie would never be convicted of any crime. The upper-class paper, Fall River Evening News, defended Lizzie's innocence. On August 8th, an inquest was called, a private investigation, and Lizzie faced her questioners under oath. Her defense attorney was not allowed to be present, and her answers continued to cast doubt on her innocence. However, the family doctor claimed he had given her sleeping medication after she had discovered her father's body, and she could possibly still be suffering from lingering side effects of the drugs, causing her answers to be so confused and inconsistent. Her sister Emma, also a spinster who lived at home, stated Lizzie had no ill feelings towards their father and stepmother. Likewise, the court critiqued investigators for not thoroughly searching Lizzie's room when they arrived at the scene and not checking Lizzie for bloodstains. Further cause for alarm was the fact that police saw Lizzie destroying a dress in her home, and they flat out accepted her answer that she was tearing up and burning the dress because it was covered in paint. Likewise, while there were axes and hatchets found in the family's basement, none appeared to be covered in bloodstains, though some speculated the murder weapon had been cleaned and then covered in dirt and dust to hide it. Still, evidence showed that Lizzie was supposedly the only possible perpetrator of the crimes on August 4th. Her sister Emma had been out of town. The maid had been outside cleaning windows when Mrs. Borden was killed and was upstairs in her own room when Mr. Borden was killed. What was Lizzie doing at those times? On August 11th, Lizzie Borden was arrested. She remained in jail for 9 months leading up to her trial in June 1893. The case became a national sensation. Women's groups, including the suffragettes, came to Lizzie's defense, claiming that there was no way Lizzie would receive a fair trial by her peers, as women were not allowed to sit on a jury. The Women's Christian Temperance Union called Lizzie a virtuous Victorian woman and a, quote, Protestant nun, meaning she was incapable of murder. She was too pure and good. One of Boston's most famous defense attorneys and past Massachusetts governor, George Dexter Robinson, came to Lizzie's aid and worked her case alongside her family attorney. Despite his closing arguments leading to rounds of uproarious applause, Lizzie was sent back to jail, and the judge ordered a superior court trial, as he viewed her as probably guilty. Her superior court trial took place in November 1893. Her friend Alice Russell stepped forward with evidence she had previously withheld from police. Alice had stayed with Lizzie after the murders of Mr. and Mrs. Borden, and it was during this time that she witnessed Lizzie retrieve a dress from a shelf in the pantry and then shove it into the cast-iron stove. The next day, Lizzie was formally charged with murder. Now, despite this, attorneys dragged their feet getting the trial going. This whole business was messy. The attorney general involved with the case was so wound up that his doctor provided him with a sick note to get him out of it. Okay, it was a more formal document stating that the attorney general was suffering from several maladies that prevented him from working, but come on, it was basically an excuse to get away from the Lizzie Borden case. District Attorney Hosea M. Knowlton took the lead prosecuting the case, even though he believed it would be difficult to get a conviction. But despite his doubts, he was thoroughly convinced of Lizzie's guilt, as shown in his impassioned 5-hour closing argument. And I thought I could talk for a long time. But the defense came to Lizzie's, defense. At their instruction, Lizzie came to trial dressed in flowing black mourning skirts, a tight black corset befitting the time period, and holding a small bouquet and a veil, looking all the part like a helpless, grieving maiden. With this costume, it was stated of Lizzie, she could not possess the physical strength, let alone the moral degeneracy, to wield a weapon with skull-cracking force. Lizzie Borden was acquitted. Newspapers and women's groups cheered for her innocence, but it wasn't exactly a happy ending. Emma and Lizzie returned to Fall River and bought a house on Hill, which they called Maplecroft. But Lizzie was pretty much shunned from her church and community from then on out. Lizzie even began to go by the name Lizbeth in an effort to distance herself from the whole affair. Even though she had been found not guilty, the town viewed her as, at best, an oddity, and at worst, another wealthy individual who used their money to get away with murder. And children often pestered her at home and in public, which I gotta say is pretty bold if you, do honestly think this person is guilty of murdering somebody with an axe. I mean, come on, kids, use your head. In 1897, 4 years after her acquittal, she was arrested for, of all things, shoplifting. But she paid a fine, and that was the end of it. She and her sister sadly had a falling out around 1904, and afterwards, Emma moved out of the home in 1905. They never reconciled. Both sisters died in 1927 as strangers to one another. At the time of her death, Lizzie Borden was worth more than $250,000, which, in today's money, roughly translates to $6 million. Since the 1893 murders, the Borden case has remained the subject of much speculation and fascination. Some have proposed the idea that Lizzie had fallen into a sort of dissociative or fugue state and killed her parents during that state. Others have suggested that perhaps Andrew Borden was more than just financially stingy. He was financially and physically abusive towards the girls, and Lizzie finally had her revenge against him. Another interesting note is that Bridget Sullivan, the maid, stated on her deathbed that she had altered her testimony in order to protect Lizzie. The truth remains the subject of much debate. And now for modern media. The Lizzie Borden house is still standing, and you can take a tour through the crime scene. You can visit the museum located in the house, have breakfast there. You can even stay the night there. So go for it and see if you agree that the house is one of the most haunted buildings in America. We've included the link to the Lizzie Borden house in the show notes. In 1948, the ballet Fall River Legend premiered. Choreographed by Agnes DeMille, yes, related to the filmmaker Cecil DeMille, it tells Lizzie's story, though it ends with her being found guilty. Fun fact, this was considered Agnes DeMille's greatest work as a choreographer. In 1956, the TV show Alfred Hitchcock Presents aired the episode The Older Sister, which framed Emma Borden as the killer. The Legend of Lizzie Borden was a TV movie released in 1975, starring Elizabeth Montgomery, Samantha from Bewitched. The film won 2 Emmys and was nominated for Best Picture at the 1976 Golden Globes. Another fun fact, Elizabeth Montgomery and Lizzie Borden are distant cousins. The film is available to watch on Amazon Prime. Lifetime took a spin at Lizzie's story with the 2014 film Lizzie Borden Took an Axe, starring Christina Ricci. This was followed by the TV series The Lizzie Borden Chronicles, also starring Ricci. The 2018 film Lizzie proposes the idea that Lizzie and Bridget Sullivan may have been lovers, and that is what led to the bloodshed. There is also an American heavy metal band called Lizzie Borden. They started in the 80s and are still creating music today. Check them out. And now for your siren call. Join our free public Discord server, link in the show notes, and let us know if you believe Lizzie is innocent or guilty. If she's innocent, who do you think killed Mr. and Mrs. Borden? If she's guilty, why do you think she did it? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for joining us, or, me, I guess, on this dark, true crime American legend. Yenny will be back next week, and the two of us will be ready with more tales to entertain and intrigue. See you soon. Bye.